Look at a powered-off router sitting in a server rack. It is just cold metal and silicon, but the second you press the power button, it immediately knows how to verify its hardware, locate its operating system, and start routing global traffic. How does an inert box actually pull that off? The short answer is that a router is effectively just a highly specialized computer, built entirely to process and move packets. Looking at this top-down diagram of a router motherboard, we can clearly see the core architecture. Its ability to come alive relies on a perfectly timed relay race between 4 distinct memory chips: ROM, flash, NVRAM, and RAM. If a device fails to boot and you do not know exactly where the baton was dropped in this 4-step sequence, you will be entirely blind when trying to troubleshoot the network outage. Step 1 begins at ROM, or read-only memory. Hard-coded by the manufacturer, it starts the wake-up process instantly. ROM runs the power-on self-test, or POST, scanning the CPU, memory, and network interfaces to ensure no hardware is broken. Once hardware passes, the bare metal components are ready, but without an operating system, they lack the intelligence to route packets. The sequence moves to flash memory, the router's internal, non-volatile hard drive dedicated to storing system software. Inside this vault sits the Cisco Inter-Network Operating System, or iOS. This massive file acts as the router's brain. At this stage, the hardware is verified and a generic operating system is loaded. But a generic OS doesn't know the IP addresses, passwords, or routing protocols for your exact local network. That requires a third step. Here, NVRAM, or non-volatile RAM, comes in. Unlike the flash vault, NVRAM is a small, specialized filing cabinet holding your personal saved settings. We call these the startup config, acting as an explicit blueprint of rules for the OS. The router needs a place to execute these instructions. That happens in RAM, the high-speed central workspace for active routing. The OS from flash and the startup config from NVRAM move onto the RAM workbench, merging together to bring the router online. Notice this critical terminology shift. When your saved startup config loads into the active RAM workspace, its name officially changes to the live running config. Let's test this process. If someone trips over the power cable at this exact moment and the router shuts down, which of these 4 memory chips loses all of its data? The answer is RAM. Because RAM is volatile memory, it requires constant electricity to hold data. If power is lost, the live running config is wiped clean. Configuration changes not actively copied back to NVRAM's filing cabinet are permanently gone. Looking at this complete diagram of the motherboard, we can now trace this isolated process as a single chronological sweep. Power triggers ROM. ROM checks the hardware, completes the post, and sends a signal over to flash to wake up the operating system. The OS moves to the RAM workbench. The system reaches into NVRAM to grab your saved configuration, pulls that into RAM as well, and the router begins routing live traffic. This matrix graphic summarizes the precise mapping you need to memorize. ROM handles the post and hardware check. Flash stores the iOS. NVRAM holds the saved startup config. And RAM runs the live, volatile running config. Understanding the exact sequence of how these 4 internal chips hand off data provides the foundation for managing and fixing external network architecture. Master the hardware to master the network. Subscribe to Visualnet for more visual networking insights.